Rift of Nations, session 13. Here's my DM notes for it, and you can just throw them because man, oh man, did my players throw me a curveball at the very start of the session. This is when your mettle is tested, Dungeon Masters. Are you a legit Dungeon Master or not? This was the biggest curveball I've had in a while. I met that, yeah, maybe ever. It was a lot, right? So here I'll start off this video how I normally do, in what I thought was going to happen and then what ended up happening. And man, oh man, are those two totally different things. Because if you remember, last we left off, we all ended where the players were. They had their strategy talk and they had some time, and we ended the session right on time where we normally say that, you know, we usually have a 3-hour session and we end at 10:30, right? We got school the next day, people have work and stuff, all that kind of stuff, right? So that's usually the default. Sometimes we go over, right? But it was right at the right time. So I was like, okay, cool. What do you guys plans and like to try and break into this grass? I have an entire that I just threw them. So they're over there. Grasslands base. I've done live streams preparing the Grasslands base. I've done DM prep to get everything going, all the different places, all the different zones they could possibly go. I had the entire Grasslands base of Chagra, this outpost, ready to go. And they left off saying, all right, how are we going to infiltrate this thing? All right, we're going to infiltrate it like this. We can come in this way, that way, this way. We're going to get a stagecoach. We're going to ambush the stagecoach and then come in. So here's my DM notes for session 13. I was like, okay, cool. They're going to go, they're going to wake up. I have some sort of like scare wake up thing because I like to start the session off with some sort of, you know, something going on, some sort of action. And then I was going to paint the landscape picture. They're going to have a stagecoach. They're going to ambush in a battle. They're going to have a little battle. You can actually see my session prep for this. I did a live stream on this channel of a live stream of me doing the prep for this. So it's going to be really funny when I throw all of this away here in a second. They're going to have some combat. I had a whole Grasslands combat prepared where I had this like a sound mage. It was like a sound sage. It was this like sound magic is what the Grasslands Nation's known for. There's going to be this whole fight where they ambush the stagecoach, but out comes a high level caster. Very powerful. It's going to be a really scary fight. It's going to be a really cool, fun fight. Cool. And then they're going to break into the outpost. They arrive, where they're going to go, how they're going to get there, guard personalities for each different thing, each different section. Each of these has a drop down with different stuff that's going on there. If they get kidnapped in the jail, they get captured and they have all this other stuff going on. Oh, baby. I was ready to go. They're going to have they're going to go into the vault. There's a whole puzzle room to get into the vault, the information that they would find, all this other stuff, the rewards inside the vault. There's lots of magic items. Look at all this. And then there we go. Right. And what happened was none of that. So I say that, but it was an amazing session. It was a super fun session, and I had to go with it. There's a moment where I realized that they're about to run off of the train tracks, which in general, I run a very, very sandbox world, a sandbox campaign. I built it around their backstories. I don't even know where they're going to go next. It's exciting, right? I like doing it like this. Not all the time, but in this case, it's very, very, very sandbox world. So let's go. I did ask them what they were doing the time before. So there is a little bit of a, when the players are like, yes, 100% Dungeon Master, we're doing this next session. And then they don't. So I was a little salty for that. Not going to lie. I was like, okay, so I spent the last preparing for this that you told me you were going to do, and then curveball, right? So take it as a note, Dungeon Masters, not even when the players say they're going to do it, they might not do it. In the last second, throw a curveball. Because here's what happened. The session, they wake up and they had this little scare about there's some people that were around. They were in this like underground little hidden little underground network of burrows from this mole person, Knackle, the NPC that they were with. And they had a little bit like somebody's outside, or careful. And after that, they're like, you know what? I was sleeping on it. I don't think we should go in there. I think we should go to the Wanderer's base in the ruins. So they're going to skip entirely this entire Grasslands base of Chagra, this outpost base. They skipped it entirely. went to the ruins, and this comes from the natural 20 thing that they had from back, if you remember oh my gosh, it was probably session 5 or so, where they went and they had this confrontation with the Wanderers, but they took a high road and they actually listened to them. He rolled a natural 20. I gave them a token of anytime you meet the Wanderers, you can show them this, and it's like a olive branch treaty from someone that's, and then they'll evaluate and they'll get in there, so you can get in the door, right, and at least be heard. So like, we have this, we can go. So my own random thing that I didn't prepare, they just natural 20 their way into this really cool thing. And I came up with this random gift on the fly. This thing is now bypassing all of this, right? So they're going to go all the way to the ruins, which is where they should go after the Grasslands base, right? And they're going to go to the ruins and skip all of that, talk to the Wanderers there at the ruins. And their whole plan was to tell the Wanderers to leave. They tell them to leave and act like they've left the ruins and they've abandoned the place. Because the whole thing is there's a standoff. The Wanderers are holding down the fort in the ruins, and the nation of Shagra has this outpost, and they're at a standstill. So their plan was to go to the Wanderers, talk to them, tell them to leave, act like they've left. They go in, they scout it, they realize they've left, and they move on in, and they have an excavation team go into the ruins like normal. Great. And it was a pretty smart plan, pretty cool plan, and I want to go with it. I want to see what's going on. I did have some, as a dungeon master, I had this moment where I was like, how many roadblocks do I put up in their way? Because I could totally put enough roadblocks in their way to where it's like, no, that's not a good idea. You got to go to the place, right? But that feels bad, and that's not D&D. So I'm going to practice what I preach, and I'm like, all right, we're going off the deep end, baby. I have not prepared the ruins as far as like the inner workings of what's going on inside the ruins. I need to do that now. I did a live stream also on the main channel where I started to prep it, right? But now I got to flush it out because they're going to be going in there next time. But yeah, it was this whole thing. So they're traveling out there. I came up with this, like they have to navigate, they have to travel from point A to point B, and there's a bunch of scouts they have to avoid. So we did like a 1-round skill challenge little thing where they had to creatively describe how they move there. There's some really creative decisions there. And then they got to the spot and they openly tried to get themselves found, and they had a torch, and they were being very overt for them to purposely get found in a very neutral, non-hostile way. They got brought into the thing. They showed the coin. I mean, they really had some smart plays, and they went all the way there. They get there, they talk to the main man. I'm making up these NPCs on my handy dandy random NPC generator, which I have a whole system that I'm about to be publishing out there. So that was a lifesaver there, and I had all these different people with these different little quirks and personalities, and then they worked their way to the main thing. They talked to the main man, second in command though, not the main person. Second in command. And Clara, the artificer, was not able to be here because she was out of town. She was literally flying back in as the session and landed as our session was in the middle of. So it didn't work out timing wise. The leader of these Wanderers is Clara's father. And what should happen is when they do get here, she was going to meet her father, but I had to impromptu not have him be there. He's off doing something else. So I'll have to answer that question. Where was he and what was he doing? But I did not want to introduce her to her long lost father, who's been gone for most of her whole life. I didn't want to reintroduce him in the middle of this with her being gone, right? And she's not at the table. I don't want to do that. So there's no way that I'm going to let that happen. So, they get there, they talk, they have the strategy, they're giving the whole rundown. He said his whole ideas, and I was like, all right, I want you to make a persuasion check. It's an advantage because of this and that and everything and all this kind of stuff, but let me know what you get. He rolls with advantage plus all of his pluses and an inspiration die, a D6 inspiration die. On top of that, that's how I do it, inspiration, give little D6s out and they add them on. Okay. Got a 30. I was like, oh my gosh, wow. The dice are telling a story here. Session 5, he gets a natural 20 with the Wanderers to outreach out and plan with them. He gets this token out of nowhere that I pull out my butt for this thing. They get to this spot. They have this conversation, come up with this plan, roll a 30. Like, come on. The dice are telling a better story than I was. Whatever I had planned up, whatever I just threw over there. We'll get to that in a second. But they had this whole ambush plan. So I was like, all right, sweet. You guys plan out what you want to go here. I'll get the map ready. And so then I let them kind of have a little talk about the ambush and like what's going to happen, like what we got going. And so I gave them something to do while I scrambled into this room. And I just erased it. I should have shown y'all the really quick battle map I drew. It was like this little small, it was like an opening in a funnel hallway into the opening to the ruins, where they were going to funnel them into a little choke point here, and this was the door to the ruins where they were going to get into, and that was what they described. I made sure they described, I described to them the options, and they described to me where they wanted to do the ambush. And then I said, what are you going to tactically do? Go for it. And then I just wanted to know the layout so I could make up a map and draw it out real quick for them. And then I brought back in the map, threw it down. They were able to place all their minis. I had to come up with some logistical reasons why all of the wanderers couldn't be there to help them. So I had a bunch of different things I came up with, as far as they have to leave, but they have to really make it look like they leave. So they have to leave enough people, and they have to go. But if those people go, they need to be protected just in case they get attacked. So I had a bunch of different reasons and logistics as to where other things were, because I didn't want this fight to be a bunch of NPCs, you know what I mean? And this was in that gray area where mass combat wouldn't really be a thing. And I want mass combat to be the theme of mass combat. And this was more of an ambush type thing. So here's what I did as an on-the-fly, think on your toes dungeon master in this crazy position. And ultimately, I know the ruins, and I had flushed them out in some way, and I knew, but I didn't have the NPCs all flushed out. I didn't have all the maps of any kind flushed out. It was all, I understood my world enough. And that's why I would say, whenever you do your prep, generally barely prep everything, barely. So that they started to go there. I knew it was there, and here we go. And I'm just going to wing it from here. So that fight, the stagecoach fight with the sound sage, I was like, okay, cool. I'm putting that fight here. It was a really cool fight, cool, intricate little mechanics with sound and the sound tethers between two people. And then there's a sound sage. I had all these mechanics that I came up with on the fly, which I'll get to here in a second. But I took that fight that was going to be the stagecoach ambush, and I modified it a little bit, and I took the core pieces of what was needed for that, and that was what was going to be in the excavation team to come into this, and some people with them, and I had 3 little NPCs that were like the engineers or the miners. They were going to come in there, and there you go. So I moved the fight to here. It was a great, awesome fight. Also, I was like, I need to add, because this needs to be big, I need to add 2. So I added in 2 more miniatures, and all I had was the Grassland Nation of Shagrad is known for their sound magic, and there's a sound sage that has like some sort of sound cones and deafening things and stunning things and sound thunder damage type stuff. I was like, what if these 2 have this like sound between the 2 of them, like pitchforks, and they pit their pitchforks, and there's damage dealt between the 2 of them. I came up with that. I pulled it out of my butt on the fly, and that was one of the coolest parts of the fight. And the only notes I gave myself as a dungeon master were the different things that their magic can do. It would be like me saying, oh, these people deal with ice and shifting it from cold to ice, and that was the only mechanic that I gave myself. I would on the fly come up with, okay, cool, they throw you with water and they surround you with water, they cover you with water and you're completely wet, and then the other person shifts it into ice and you become encased in ice and you get frozen up, or you know what I'm saying. So you can just come up with stuff on the fly if you give yourself generalized magical mechanics. So I had the sound sage flushed out, but I was like, I need to do more. So I added these 2 minis that I got from here. I was like, what can they do? Sound tuning forts between the 2 of them. Great. And that's all the only thing I gave them, and that's all they did. And so I just had them move and position people between them. It was super cool. So, and another cool thing is this sound elemental. I had the sound elemental that this person summoned with a scream, and it like formed this like it looked like static or like glitches, and it was like just an elemental of screams. It was immune to all damage. That's crazy, coach. You can't make a monster immune to all damage. But it had 1 hit point, and it was the only thing it could be damaged is thunder damage. So if it took any sound damage at all, it disrupted the sound and killed it immediately. That was the thing I came up with on the fly. I even had it's in the papers I threw. I even had a fully stacked, I homebrewed a sound elemental, and I had all these stats for it, but I was like, no, This would be cooler if it's immune to all damage and if it takes any sound damage. So now the players had to come up with a way to deal thunder damage to this thing. They had some methods. They used that. They had these arrows that they found earlier from they got from some bandits from before, that they ambushed in the session before. They had these little booming blade type arrows where it thunder damage, and if it moved, it dealt damage to it. So if they used that on it, it would work. And they had a bunch of other opportunities and a bunch of other little things. One of the players has a weapon where if he takes thunder damage, the sword gets supercharged in some way and deals thunder damage on his next hit. But the player doesn't know that yet. He's never figured out that mechanic yet. So I was throwing this like puzzly type stuff at him. I was like, all right, they got to figure out how to deal sound damage to it. So the coolest part, and this is the only highlight that I'll say of the whole thing, is the barbarian was stuck between Q, the Warforged barbarian, was stuck between two of the sound sisters. He was stuck in the middle of them. He grabs one of them and throws it to the elemental. He had no idea that it was going to immediately die, but he throws it towards the elemental, and the sound beam between the two of them crosses over the elemental, immediately killing it in one round. I was like, it was amazing. It was amazing. And the fight was a really close down to the wire fight, because at the end of the fight, spoilers, is Q goes down. Q goes down. He was the main focus of the main sound sage, and they have all these sound things going off. There's cone sounds. They ambushed him, got the jump on him, but he's just going to town. He had one legendary action. Anytime sound was dealt around him, he could amplify that and use the sound to deal more damage. It was a super intricate fight, and I could do a whole video on just that fight, because all my combats are really, really like that, and really, really puzzly and intricate, and it's just so fun, and we all have so much fun seeing them trying to figure it out when they do figure it out, and stuff like that happens. It's so cool. But Q went down unconscious, and he failed his first death save. And at the very end of the combat, I was like, Clara is the only person that can heal Q, because Q's a Warforged, and he does not get healing through normal spells or healing potions. It has to be some sort of tinkery type thing to get him back up. That's a thing that I know that's crazy homebrew, like, oh, it's a huge nerf. I know, and the player was down for it, so he went down. And Clara's really far away, so she tries to get to him, isn't able to get to him. He fails a death save. On her next turn, the combat was done. The caster teleported out. He left because he was the last one left, and it was all down to the wire. I was like, all right, Clara cannot get there in one turn. He's going to have to make another death saving throw, and then another one from her trying to move to him and then not being able to get to her, and then he goes before her in the initiative, so he'd go before her, so that's two more death saving throws that he'd have to make. And one of the players is the wind druid. He's like, I want to get a gust of wind, and like, he's used gust in very creative ways, and he's been building on it as part of his character that I'm giving him some features with, and he's upgrading his whole gust thing of what he can do. So he's like, I want to gust behind her and help her move quicker, and so he's manipulating wind to try and like get her there quicker. He rolls for it, succeeds, and I was like, okay, she's gonna get there, but you still have to make one death saving throw, and he already failed one. So if you roll a natural one, your character's dead, and I don't mess around, and my players know that. I don't mess around with death saves. If your character's dead like that, y'all are level 3, or sorry, they're level 4 now. There's no real means. That it would have been real rough to try and revive him, like real rough, and they know that. And it was like, oh my god. And he rolled a 6, which is a fail. But it wasn't a natural one, because that'd be 2 failures. And Clara's able to get to him, and she has to make a check for this now. This is not some sort of like magic in my system. They have to roll a d20 to see if she can get it done quick enough. Can she get the healing done to him quick enough? Because magic's not perfect, and she's scrambling. She rolls, hits it. He doesn't have to make another death save. She saves his life, and you could feel it at the table. Crazy, right? Now, sadly, that character, Clara, was not there. She's the one that was gone. So I rolled the dice in front of, and had everybody there for that. So, close, near death, perfect send off for a combat, all from a session that wasn't even supposed to be that way. But you just roll with it, and you go with it, and you see what your players do, and you keep telling this crazy story with them, because man, oh man, that was a great session. And I feel great as a dungeon master for being tested and coming out on top, feeling like it was a great session. Like, I don't know if they know that I wasn't prepared at all and wasn't ready for that. I knew they knew it was a curveball, but I don't know if they even know that. So we'll talk about that after when the session's over, and maybe they watch these videos when everything's done. So anyway, to wrap everything up and put a bow on it, all the stuff that I had that I jokingly threw off to the side, that base, that Chagra base that's there, and I have everything flushed out there. Yeah, I didn't get to use that. But now the next base that they go to of Chagras or whatever, that's going to be the base for it. And I can now uproot that base, and I have a portable base now that I can put down at some other spot and be ready for anything else that they go out and do, and if they want to go to some other base or whatever. So now I can freely put out bases out in the world of places where people could have gone, and or things that places they could go, and I'll be ready for it with a full-on. I'm going to make a section of my notes of Chagras base, and it's just ready for them whenever they choose to go there, and we'll see if they circle back to it and go backwards to it, and then hey, there we go. But I'm glad that I went with it. I inspire you guys to go with it. Players, though, if you tell your dungeon master going to do something, man, but I love that my players have the freedom and they know that I'm going to go with them, so that they didn't feel forced to. Well, because we said we got to now, my hands are tied. So I do love, in retrospect, even thinking back on it, that my players felt comfortable enough to be like, oh, I know he said this, but hey, let's go. And like, I'm going to roll with it. And they knew I'd roll with it. So super awesome, super fun, stay creative, and definitely think way outside the box. Peace.